The stem stitch is an incredibly versatile outline stitch. It can be used to make sharp, clean corners, beautiful rounded curves, and it can even be used as a fill stitch. So let's take a closer look at how to do the stem stitch. Let's take a look at how to make a straight line and a sharp corner using the stem stitch. So I'm going to start off popping up from the back side so I can hide my knot. And for the first stitch, I'm going to go a stitch length forward, but I won't pull through all the way. I'm going to keep this little loop underneath my line of stitching. Then for the first stitch only, I'm going to come up about halfway between those 2 points and pull it forward. Now I'll take another stitch length step, pull it through, and from here on out, I'm going to come back to just about where I left off for that last stitch. Pull it through. Take a step forward. Save my loop below. Take a step back and pull it through. So we can continue poking through to the back side as we're learning this stitch and coming back up from behind. But once we get the hang of it, we can get a little bit more advanced and start to do the sewing method. So instead of poking through to the back side, I'm going to do a little scoop and keep my needle on the top. And in this way, my stitches will start to flow like a river. I can really get into the rhythm of the stem stitch. And it may seem a little bit counterintuitive that my line of stitching is actually traveling from left to right. But because I'm right-handed, the direction of my needle is actually going from right to left as I sew. So I take a step forward, I put my needle in, and I pop out. My needle is traveling from right to left, but my line of stitching goes from left to right. And I'm making sure that my loop is always at the bottom so that the direction of the twist of my stem is always in the same direction. Now let's suppose I want to make a sharp corner and turn to have my stitching go on a 90-degree angle like this. The stem stitch is great because it can make a really clean corner. So rather than jumping up now to head up with my stitching, I'm going to take one more little step forward, just a tiny little stitch like this to finish that last length of my stem. And now I can take a step up. I'll come back to that corner. And I'll keep my loop on the right side now. Come back up, almost the same place. And I can carry on. Now I'm going to turn my fabric so I can keep traveling in the same direction and keep stitching on. So now that I've turned my fabric, my loop is once again below my line of stitching. And I'll carry on. Making this beautiful twisted stem stitch. The stem stitch is also a great choice for curved lines, as it can bend a curve really cleanly and beautifully. So let's give that a try. I'm going to start my first stitch with a little half stitch. And now I'm going to start stitching my curve. So I'm going to keep turning my fabric as I work my design so that it's more comfortable for my hands, but also so that my needle is always traveling in the same direction. So I'm right-handed, so my needle should always be traveling from right to left as I work. And with the stem stitch, I'm going to always keep my loop below the line that I'm stitching. Now, as you're making a tight curve, you might notice that at first it looks like your stitch is going to kind of split like this, but we can sort of give it a little tug and get that stem to lie down flat and then carry on. Stem stitch is also a great option as a filler stitch. Now, for 4th grade students, I recommend that any design that's going to have a filler not be much bigger than the size of about a quarter. Sometimes I see children who come up with these wonderful ideas for great big designs and they want to fill the whole thing with fill stitches, and it can become quite unwieldy very quickly. So try to keep anything with fill stitches small. But let's take a look at how stem stitch can be used as a filler. So I've already done part of my golden autumn leaf here. I started off by making the outline, and then I created this center line here. And now I'm ready to do the second half of my filling. And I've decided to use a couple different shades of yellow here just to add in a little bit of shading on my leaf. So I'm going to start right up here in the corner. And I'm just going to follow right along the last edge of my stitching here. And by putting the next line pretty close, I can make a nice filler. So I'm getting right in there. Again, always making sure my loop is below my line of stitches. And I really do want to get close. I don't want to be on top of my other stitches, but I do want to be close to give that fill effect. Here's my last little row of stitches, filling it up. That last bit of white space. I hope you enjoy creating designs with the stem stitch. Happy stitching!